Hi there, and welcome to Three Rail Steve. And today we will be designing a signal box for my layout using a free graphic design program called Inkscape. But first of all, we need to actually look at the signal box, which does exist on a abandoned railway line. So I'm just on Google Earth. I'm just zooming in to have a look at the roof, and using the Google Earth measuring tool, I'm just going to measure some of the dimensions of the roof. So I'm going to measure obviously the length and the width and possibly the little ridge on the top as well, because that will help us construct the roof later on. Google Earth is a very useful resource. You can also use it to measure heights of buildings, because it does give you the sort of the height above sea level of different surfaces. So if you click on different points of the picture, you can work out the difference between the two and hence work out the height of a building, say. So yeah, invaluable tool. Obviously, if you've got a real world location, if you can actually go and visit it, take photographs, which I've done, and maybe take a big tape measure with you if you can get close enough, and measure it, because a real measurement's obviously going to be more accurate than one taken from a satellite thousands of miles or hundreds of miles up in the sky. So just on the Inkscape program itself, so we're going to start with a square, and or a rectangle I should say, and this is just representing the base of the signal box. So I've selected the rectangle from the left hand menu, and I'm just putting in the dimensions that I actually got from the map. So the dimensions are obviously 4mm to a feet. So if it's 20 feet, then it's going to be 80mm, say. So just basically start with that. Now I'm going to try to work out the roof to begin with. So it's probably handy to just quarter this the base of the roof. This is actually how big looking down on the roof it is, the base of it. So I'm just going to use squares that are, rectangles that are a quarter of the size, and that will actually give me all the centre lines now. So I'm just changing the colours. If you look at the bottom of the menu, you can select colours. So I probably won't get this right first time because I've not tried to do this before, but we'll see how we actually get on with this. So I made another rectangle, and I'm just making it the length of the ridge in the middle of the roof. So I've got that as another sort of kind of reference point. So so if you look at Inkscape, it's worth watching quite a few videos on how to use Inkscape, because there are lots of different controls. For example, if you press Control and move your mouse, you can zoom in and out of the picture without affecting the scale. And if you press Shift and do the same thing, you can slide the picture across your screen without having to use the mouse. And obviously up the wheel on your mouse, you can make the picture go up and down. If you look on the top of the menu, there's lots of little controls. A useful one is the lock, because you can actually lock the dimension of the shape. So if you move the shape, say you increase the length of one side, it will maintain the actual shape, so it automatically increase the length of the other side. So I've just moved those. So I've worked out how high I want the signal box to be by sort of kind of looking at a photograph and comparing it to other measurements. So I'm just using, there's a Bezier tool on the left hand side of your screen that I've just clicked on, and you can use this. You basically click from point to point and join it up, and then that creates a new shape. So you now have this triangular shape. So I can use the control at top just to flip it round, and then if you look on the top right of the screen, there's a blue icon, and that's the clip. Sorry, not the clip. I'm trying to remember what it's called now. The snap feature. So it means that when you move a shape together, it just snaps straight into place. You can actually switch that off. That is useful as well, because sometimes you don't want it to do that. But when you want them to join together in a nice sort of neat kind of way, accurately, then it's very important to be able to do that. So I've got the middle shape of the roof sorted out now. So I'm going to try. Yeah, we just probably, so we need to get the other sort of hips of the roof, the other triangular bits. So there's a tricky diagonal that goes from the middle, from the centre to the corner. That is quite a, that's possible to work out using the Bezier tool. So what I'll probably do is draw a line, create the diagonal, flip it round, and then because we know the height of the middle bit, because it's going to be the same as the other height, then we can eventually work out by turning shapes around and using the locking mechanism to keep them the same. We can work out what the angle is to create the shape of the hip going into the corner. So that's what I'm kind of trying to work out how to do at the moment, probably not very successfully. So if you just go back to how we use, when you initially select the shape, it goes into a kind of like a node mode, but you want it to be in a vector mode. So there's a vector icon, sort of the third one down from the top of the screen. It's highlighted in blue at the moment. You are on that. And then that, if you look at the top of the screen, there are measurements, and you can actually type in the measurements that you want the rectangle to be, which is a really useful feature again. So you do that, and you can gradually build up these shapes over with a bit of trial and error, and get them to sort of mesh together accurately as well. So that's obviously very important. I'm just trying to work out this angle. I'm not sure I'm doing it correctly at the moment. There are some very good videos on how to do all this kind of stuff. There's a guy that models in N-gauge, and the channel's called Chandwell. It's really well worth watching. The guy's a total expert on how to do all this kind of design stuff and print out buildings, and his layout just looks absolutely incredible. This is really my kind of first attempt at ever doing this, so it's a bit more basic, but I think I can produce something that looks reasonably okay. So I'm still fiddling around trying to get all these little triangles sorted out, because these are going to be the things. So it basically will consist of a base with a middle going, which is the green bit at the top, and some bracing structures coming off, and then we can lay the tiling over the top of that. So just getting that, trying to get that diagonal there. I'm not sure if that's the best way of doing it, but just going to give it a try. So just moving that. So just going to try. What I'm trying to do is I've got now got on the diagonal of the triangle is it's going to be the bottom of the shape. I've just got the height of the shape as well. So I'm just trying to work that out and twist this square into position and then drag it so it is the kind of the right size. And then we'll hopefully be able to chop it with something, maybe with the Bezier tool, or over lay a triangle. Yeah, I'm just going to work out if that is the best way of doing it. So I've got that measurement there, I've got the triangle there, so that's created a triangle. Should be the right shape, I'd have thought. It looks kind of right. So we've got that, fairly happy with that, I think. I just turn it round, and yeah, that looks pretty good, I think. Yeah, I'm having a bit of a think about this one, a rethink. Oh, I deleted it, yeah. So I'm going to do this again, because I'm not really happy with that, the way that worked. So I'm just going to try a simpler method. So we're going back to the Bezier tool, so we're just going to mark off this triangle again. So I've got my snapping on, so it should go into the corners accurately, hopefully. That went a bit wrong, let's do that again. Yeah, sometimes you click on the wrong thing and it does all sorts of weird stuff. So just get rid of that a minute. Maybe turn the clipping off, possibly. No, I think we'll just stick with that. So try again. I'm just going to try and get this triangle thing going. So we've got that. Let's move that out of there. No. I'm just going to rotate that. So it's the bottom bit is now the diagonal. So make a copy of that one. So you can copy shapes. If you press Control D when you're actually highlighted a shape, then you can easily copy it. So it's quite a useful thing to be able to do, because sometimes if you're trying to work something out, you want to keep an original copy of it so that you don't destroy it. So everything in the white area of the screen is where it's a printable part of the screen. So if you press print, it would print what was inside of the white area. Right, so I'm just now trying to set it all up. I've got some of the shapes that I need. I've got the little hips that go into the corner. I probably need a couple of triangles that goes from the middle of the roof outwards, so we can build this skeleton up of the roof, ready to put the tiles over the top. So I'm just going to work that one out now. So I'm using that middle piece again. So we know the height and we know the distance to the edge. So we're just going to have to put those figures in. Let's see what we can do with this. I'm going to take that off. Just taking the lock off at the top so we can change it a bit, because we don't want it to keep its shape when we move one figure. We just want it. We just need to make that triangle. So we've got the triangle now, so that should be the correct dimension. We'll just pop that over there and maybe duplicate it a few times, because we probably need 4, 3, 4, something like that. Probably 4 would be a better idea. Yeah, 4 is good. And then we just get rid of the stuff that we don't need. So probably just print that one and move that one. Yeah, get rid of that one. Probably ought to leave the colours on there actually, because it probably as a guideline it's better to have them. So I'm just going to, I've taken them off for now, but I think at some point I'll put them back, because it shows you where the centre and the quarter lines are, so when you're gluing it together you can glue it together nice and accurately. So right now, so we're moving on to actually designing the signal box itself. So obviously the dimensions have to sort of tally with the dimensions of the roof. So what I think is a sensible thing to do is to start with the door, because we know a human being, worst case scenario, back in I don't know, whenever this signal box was built, 1890, it's never going to be more than 6 feet tall. And a lot of the door frames back then were probably 6.5, maybe 7 feet tall at the most. So I'm going on the slightly smaller side, so I'm going to say sort of just over 6 feet, which in 00 scale would be around about sort of 25 millimeters. So we're going to make our door 25 millimeters high, and that's kind of our sort of baseline measurement. So just set that square up and just type in the dimensions of the door at the top, and if you look at the top of the screen, and then when you click on it, it should jump into the correct shape, which it does, which is nice. So we have the base of the roof, so we already know the length of the building and also the width of the building, so we're going to use those measurements to actually start building up one of the sides of the building. So we're just going to unlock that. So pretty much everything's made out of squares, really. If you can make a square on Inkscape, you can pretty much design any building. So I'm just basically getting the first side design, so I'm making sure it matches the other square, so just do that a minute. Just move the door into position, and I've got several photographs. You can't see them in front of me, but I can so I'm splitting the signal box into two halves, so the ground floor and the upper floor, because there's a layer, a platform that goes through the middle of it, and I need to be able to, for the strength of it, I need that to be in the middle of the signal box. I'm going to have to build it in two halves. So I'm just working on the top half at the moment, so I'm just going to get and I've worked out, looking at a double O gauge model that I have of a signal box, that each floor is going to be approximately 30 millimeters high. So I'm just also doing, so the top one is the long side, and the one on the right hand side is the shorter side, is the width side, if you like. So I'm just getting those shapes ready, and we'll probably have to flip that one round or just do a different shape. So it's just, yeah, I'll just flip that around and we'll join that one to the other one, and so we can tell them apart. We're just going to get them slightly different colours. So now all we need to do is to actually just duplicate them again. So we need four sides, so two long sides, two short sides. So just move that around there, pop that in there, and we'll just do the same again with the other one. Just move that across to there. And we've got the doors on the side of the building, two doors actually. There's one on the upper floor and one on the ground floor. So we just start by getting that door in the correct position. Okay, so we're just going to position the door. Just trying to get it so it's kind of near the corner. So I've just duplicated it because I need the top part of the door, the window, to be level with the top part of the door, because that's how it is in reality. So and there's another window next to it, so probably just duplicate it again. So Control D duplicates the shape. So just working out what to do next. So when you click on a rectangle, if you click it once, you can basically stretch it in different directions to make it bigger or smaller or wider or longer or whatever. If you double click it, it gives you a rotation handle in the corner, which means you can actually rotate it as well. Right, so I'm just working out the windows now. So I've just shortened that one. The doors is one window in, and then there's another window on the other side. Now obviously all these windows have to kind of line up with each other around all the different sides of the building, depending on how exactly they were kind of built. I've worked out that the tops of the windows all basically line up, but some of the bottoms of the windows don't necessarily line up. It's just the way the building was designed, I guess. And also to make sure that all the shapes are sometimes it's worth clicking just to check that they haven't shifted. Sometimes you accidentally touch them and they move slightly, or the dimension changes or whatever. So we know what all the dimensions are. We just keep a check on that just to make sure it all stays the same, because that's quite important. So we've got the shape, the shape of where the door is and where the windows are. So we're going to build, when we make the card templates, they're going to be in layers. So you're going to have the basic layer, which is the wall, and you've got a frame layer. So you're going to build like timber frames, window frames, bits of architecture that are sort of superimposed on top. And you have another layer which is going to be like the doors and the windows, which come in behind. But to begin with, what you need to do is to build it as one thing. So you put all these shapes together, and you just basically construct it. So you just use rectangles. I mean, that's just a very what I've just put on there is just a very thin rectangle, represents the door, part of the door frame. So yeah, so you just gradually, it's a slow process, but you just gradually go through it, add all these little bits on, if you like. So I'll tell you why you do this. You really need, well, you need two things. You need to keep a copy of everything that you make. So you've got one thing that goes on the printed part of the screen, but you keep another copy of it away from the screen. So if anything goes wrong, you've got something to go back to. You haven't destroyed it. So that's quite important. So just gradually build all this up. So that's where all these window. So we're just working on the window framing at the moment, really. So I normally do is I work on like 3 measurements. The thinnest window frame, if you like, I would do would be 0.75 of a millimetre, and the thickest would probably be 2 millimetres, which is quite thick. If you think in W scale, that's like 6 inches, equivalent of 6 inches, and quite a few of the other ones are like 1 millimetre. The reason I don't go below 0.75 millimetres is because you're cutting it out of card, and it's not impossible, but it starts to become quite difficult to cut card that's sort of below that thickness. You have, especially if you cut through thick card, then it becomes a bit of a problem. If you want to make anything that thin, you really need to use thin card because it's just easier to cut. I use a scalpel. Just find my scalpel so I can have a little look at it. No, I lost it. It's around somewhere around here. Oh, here we go. So I always use one of these Swan & Morton scalpels. One that I actually have. I bought one as probably about 18, 19 when I was a graphic design student, so a long time ago. And I have the same one, but I just, lots a nice sharp blade in it, and it's absolutely fantastic for cutting these cardboard shapes. So as you can see, we're just building this up now. And it's starting to look like something, like a part of a building, which is exactly what we want. So, yeah, so the next thing to do, so we've got all these lines in, just looking at checking that it looks like the photograph. Dimensionally it looks like the photograph, and sometimes it's just worth just playing around with it a little bit. If you take the lock off the snapping feature off, snapping feature is handy because you can center lines on windows and things. So I've basically done all that now. So I've changed the colours a bit, but it's the same. If you look at it, it's the same thing. It's a different part of the building. So I've skipped ahead a little bit here. And the next thing to want to do is to get rid of the on the wall. I don't want shapes in there. I just actually want the windows not to be empty space, if you like. So the way to do that is if you first of all, if you click on each window and press the shift button at the same time, you can group them. And if you go into on the top of left of the screen, what you can do is to actually you group them together. So you press group together, union it's called, and then if you go into a different part of the screen, which my memory is because I can't actually see what I'm looking at the moment, you can then remove the window. So I'll probably talk a bit more about that later on when I can remember what I'm actually talking about. So anyway, so the crucial thing is to actually take the windows out, so it's just a space, not another shape. Just going to stop it there a minute. Right, okay, I had a little bit of a brain freeze there. So what you first of all need to do, if you look at the top of the menu of the screen, you'll find something called path. So click on that. So you want to join all the shapes you want to deduct from the actual big shape. You want to join together first of all, so the window shapes. So if you press the shift key and click on each one, it will group them together. And then you go on to path, and you scroll down, and until you come to union. You click union, and it joins them together. Become one. They basically become one shape. So you've got this one, or they move together, if you like. They're grouped together. And then all you need to do then, if you unclick everything, go back to the main shape. So yeah, so you click the main shape, and then after you've done that, you press shift, and you click on all the shapes you want to deduct. So you click on the thing that you've just grouped together in effect, and then you go back into the menu that you were before, and you look for difference, and you click that, and it will just remove it, and you're just left with the window spaces, if you like. So that's quite a neat feature. Well, we've jumped a little bit ahead here. So we've made all the shapes, we made all the frames, and we're now setting up the actual thing we're going to print. Now, this is a little bit more advanced, what I've done here. So what I've done, I've got all the buildings at the top. I've already made the shapes, and I've already clipped the things called textures. We'll get onto that in a minute because the video is a little bit batter front. So I'm making copies of the shapes again, and because the textures that I've clipped to the back of the original shapes aren't quite the right colour, what I'm doing is I'm clipping a plain shape on top. Sorry, I'm putting a plain shape on top, and if you look at the colour on the right hand side, so you can get to, if you go to object, you can select the sort of colour option, which is the colour option. You can change the opacity of the actual shape. So if you drop it down to 50%, you can basically tint it. You can change the colour. So if you select yellow, you can give it a tinge of yellow, and the pattern underneath will show through, which is very handy. And you can adjust it so you get the right amount of yellow coming through. And obviously you can pick which yellow you want. I want a fairly pale colour. It's not going to be too much in your face. Some of the other actual structures that I've created here, I'll probably be painting. Like if you look at those red frames, I'm probably going to put those onto 2mm card. The rest of it is going to be, I've got this thin card that I've got very cheaply from a sort of craft shop. It's probably about 1/4 mil thick, but you can actually just make it thicker by gluing bits of it together using PVA. So I'll probably try and make it between 0.5 and 0.75 of a millimetre to give it some sort of structural rigidity. Right, so where are we now? I'm just showing a useful feature. So we use these. What you can do is you can, rather than try and just use plain colours, to make it look more realistic, you use things called textures, and there are a few websites where you can get textures from, like textures.com. Sometimes you have to pay for them, and the textures you really want are the ones that are kind of like a repeat pattern, so when you join them together you can't see a join, although you can kind of manipulate it on the screen to get it to join up, even if they're not designed that way. I think the Model Scenics, there are various companies that do them. You can just get them, if you just Google textures for model railways, or sometimes you can sort of get them for free as well. What I tend to do is I set up an Inkscape page, and I just have textures on it. So I have one Inkscape page which has got different brick textures, and another one's got different roof tiles, and another one's got planks, etc. And you can just basically copy and paste them onto the page, and when you need them, you just go on that page, copy it and paste it like I'm showing here. I'm sort of and then you can just, what you need to do then obviously is to scale the shape of the texture down to the scale of the actual object, and you can do that by like counting planks. So if the object is like 20 planks high, your wall, you want to make sure that there are 20 planks on that wall. So as you can see, I've also built all the bottom of the signal box as well, similar thing. So we're just going to move that in. So the way you do it is you move the shape over the top of the texture, and you go onto object and you look for clip, and then you just by selecting both those objects, you select clip, and it will clip the texture to the object. So the object is now that texture in the correct shape. And like I was showing you, you can tint it by copying another one, another version of it from the master drawn, if you like. You can then tint it by placing it over the top and reducing the opacity of the shape. So it's a little bit of a tedious process, but you kind of get there in the end. You can see also that I've made a lot of windows as well. So those windows fit behind the shape. So just opening up the Inkscape program again, and you can see the list of files, and just obviously click on the one that you need. Should open any second. There we go. And this one is a text archive texture that I've made. I'm just showing you how to copy and paste. I'm doing it on the same page, but obviously you could just once you've copied it, you can paste it onto any one of your other projects, so it's quite a useful way of moving textures and storing them in a place where you know they are. And I quite like using textures and making the buildings, because you can, using colour overlays, you can sort of subtly alter the colour of them, and there are various other things that I can't get into now, but you can do as well. So yeah, you end up with all these shapes, and then you basically print them onto some A4 sticky labels, and you can just cut them up and stick them to various thicknesses of card and turn them into the shapes that you need to actually make your buildings. I've only sort of really just got into this, but it's quite a satisfying process. It's quite creative, you know. Obviously you need to measure your buildings accurately to get a good looking model, but there is sort of some kind of license to play with the textures and the shapes maybe a little bit, just to get the thing that how you want it to look in the finished product. So I'll just leave you with this screen, probably try and get onto the into the actual page which has got the printed area on it. The point of the white page in the middle is anything you drag onto that area is the thing that you will print. So you basically you can use like one screen, but you drag different things onto that area, and you can save them under different names, and then that way you can access them to actually do your printing. So you can have, for example, this one is the actual main part of the printing. But anyway, I'll leave you with that, and I will see you on the next video. So thank you for watching. Bye.